Greetings! My name is Ev, and today we will be taking a look at this box of 60 acrylic markers from ARRTX. So very quickly, right away, again, ARRTX always has some really fun packaging. This is the case here too. We see this set has 60 colors, better coverage and fewer pen marks, waterproof and brush tip, interesting, available on various surfaces. I think that kind of means that you can use it on all sorts of surfaces. So this says liquid ink and zero pumping, so it's not one of those markers where you have to squish the tip to get the ink to flow, I guess. On the back we have a bit more info, most notably the colors. They are labeled only with a number, and of course, like it says, it's just to give you the ballpark of what the color will be. It can be really difficult to match the color of an ink to the color of a printing press. And then you also have how to use these. So it says shake well before use, open a cap, start using, recap tightly after use. Pretty straightforward. There are two precautions. So it says the ink needs to be shaken evenly before each use. Good to know. To prevent the ink from splattering, close the cap when shaking. Fair. This is how they show up. Oh, interesting. Check this out. Can you see? Can you see? Nothing happened. Can you see it has trays, and you can like grab them from the sides because of the way this box is made, which is really cool. As always, we have this little thank you card from ARRTX, and then we have all of the markers. I like the look of these, like in terms of design. Ooh, and the plastic is really fun to touch too, so that's awesome. All right, so obviously they are jumbled. That's not gonna stay like that. I'm gonna definitely reorganize them. 1, 2, 3, and there's a fourth tray in here, but you can't as easily pick it up. Like the lid doesn't go below the fourth tray. Of course, my box was a little dinged in transit. It traveled from very far, so again, that's fine. But if you can manage to get this one in somewhat pristine shape, it is a really fun way to organize your markers, and it takes up very minimal space once everything is stacked up and you put the cover on it. What I'm not seeing is a swatch card, so that's something that I'll have to either look online, perhaps they have one online that I can print, or I'll have to make my own for 60 colors. Let's take a look at one of the pens right away. So this is how the marker presents itself. Pretty straightforward, pretty simple. You can see like there's a bit of an empty space at the end of the pen. It has this cute branding with the little clouds with faces on them. ARRTX acrylic marker, recap after use, strong coverage. It's a brush. Shake well with the cap on before use, made in China. And the cap also has the color number. It's not on the body of the pen though. You can hear that there seems to be some little shaker balls in the body, but it's not the same kind of clunk, 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 clunk than you would have with other pump markers. It has this part that reminds me of how fountain pens are set up. And then you have a felt brush tip. This brush, but it's like a felt brush. They click really well, and you can post the cap. Of course, when you post the cap of a marker like this, you have to be mindful of ink possibly getting on the pen and then on your hands as you handle these, but there's nothing that's not standard for this kind of markers. I'm really excited to swatch these out. I really like the look of them. I will be swatching them on light and dark paper so we can see that coverage they talk about, and I will also try to create something with them, so we'll see. I'll be back in just a second for you, but I'm gonna go get some work done. And I am back. So I have quite a few things to show. First of all, the swatches. So the set didn't come with a paper for swatching, so I took one of my papers that I had. It's a thin cardstock in white, and I set up the sheet and then I swatched the markers. The color selection is quite nice, I think, and you can tell that some colors perhaps go down a little bit more smooth and some a little bit more streaky. Not entirely sure why it's like that, but like this one here, this magenta, you can kind of see the brush strokes a bit more. Then I did these, so same thing but on black paper, and now you can kind of see a little bit more which colors are opaque and which colors are more transparent. As you can see, this purple here, this marker, is possibly the most opaque one. They all have a significant level of opacity, so I would say that they're at least semi-opaque to opaque, considering that this is supposed to be an opaque medium. I feel like if you really want to get a good opacity for these on darker paper, you would have to do multiple layers. So once I had that, what I did is I sketched out a drawing that I then printed out and that I transferred onto another piece of the same paper I use for the swatches. When that was done, there's one thing I did before I started coloring with the markers, is that I did some little research for a color palette that I wanted to use. So I had a vague idea in mind, but I still wanted to test it out before putting it down. So I grabbed a random piece of paper and I did these little color sketches on it. And once I had something that I thought was going in the direction that I wanted, then I started on my drawing. Now I want to show you the drawing in this stage. It's not finished, but still I wanted to show it to you guys before I went back on top of it to do the finishing touches. So a few observations here. Concerning the artwork itself, as you can see, my paper not quite buckled, but rolled from the wet ink that I put on it. So perhaps that's something to keep in mind, maybe to use thicker paper for this, but I used what I had, so there's that. Another thing that I did try was to add a little bit of colored pencil with my ARRTX colored pencils, but they don't grip well over the acrylic surface. I know what they say, fat over lean, which is basically in reference to the order in which you can stack mediums. And I was kind of hoping that the acrylic here would be matte enough to allow for a little bit of colored pencils, but it didn't quite pan out as I hoped it would. Another thing that I want to kind of show is that if you look at the area here, you can kind of see that it's shiny, right? So that's from layering enough of the marker so that it becomes a more opaque, smooth color. And then I also noticed that if you pick up a bit of tissue and then you can buff it up even more, so give it a little bit more of a shine. But also it's gonna pick up a little bit of the pigments. I don't know if you can see, but on my paper towel there is a little bit of the red that transferred. So that's something to keep in mind. Of course, since this is acrylic, once it's dry you can basically layer and layer and layer. Editor Ev here, I meant to say when you layer the markers. So when you put a first layer, let it dry, put a second layer, let it dry, third one, and so on and so forth. At a certain point, it's going to become pointless to do so, but it's still an option. So you can build up the color, but you might also be able to change a color. Like say, if you realize that you don't want this to be red anymore, you could possibly put another color on top. Ideally, a color that is darker would be easier, but you could potentially build up a lighter color. You can see here the highlight that I did. I did it at the end over the darker colors and it worked out okay, but it's also a very small area and it's a thin area. So I feel like that allows for a lot of the streakiness possibly to disappear because it is so small. All right, so if we go back to these, and now I'm gonna go through everything that I noticed when I was drawing with these. So I quite like these. I think they're quite fun to hold. They're really a nice length, a nice format. The only issue that they have is that this part unscrews really easily. So basically, you are going to regularly have to tighten up the marker as you use it. So that's one thing that I noticed. The other little detail that I noticed is somewhat related to that, is that this part here is not labeled. There's no color number on it. You might not need it for as it is, like they're all the same, but when they're attached to the pen, if for some reason you have a bunch of them open, like away from their cap, and then you're looking to recap them, you will have to color match carefully. There's no like cheat code. You cannot just rely on the numbers to put them back together. Another thing that I noticed as I was doing my drawing, and I tried to exemplify that, but you have to be careful what you put under these markers. So I tried on these three paper, it's the same kind of idea, but it's three different paper. So this is the paper that I use for my swatches and my drawing. This is a slightly thicker paper, and this is regular printer paper as a sort of reference point. As you can kind of see, it will smudge whatever you use the markers over, basically. So when I first transferred my illustration, I had transferred it with pencil, just regular pencil line, and immediately when I colored the yellow cat, I noticed that it would smudge the pencil around. So I took a pause and then I did a little bit of erasing. So I partially erased my pencil line, and you can kind of see that it still smudges, but since there's less graphite to smudge, well, there's less of a smudge. And then I thought, what else do I have on hand that's common? So I tried a ballpoint pen and it's still smudged a little bit, less than the pencil, of course, but for something that is completely waterproof when it's fully dry, it's still smudged with the acrylic markers. And then I used two different waterproof fine liners. and both of them smudged as well, though the finer one was slightly better. Like there's definitely less smudging for the thinner one. So the bottom one is a 0.05 size fine liner and the thicker line is a 0.3. Both of those are completely waterproof when I use them for painting, but with this acrylic marker, everything's smudged. So there might be another pen out there or a pencil that wouldn't smudge like this, but you could also just work with pencil and be very careful about lightening your sketch before putting the markers over it. I think there's quite a few options of stuff you could do here, but I just wanted to show you that if you tend to transfer line art, you gotta be mindful of what you use to do that, because it's gonna affect the color that you layer on top of it. I was kind of hoping that these would stay matte, but as you can see, they turn a little bit shiny when you layer them, and then if for some reason you decide to buff them, even shinier, which is the standard result when you buff a color, but still. And then they were perhaps a little bit more streaky than I would have thought, and I was careful about shaking all of them before using them, but still I had to do quite a significant number of layers, 2, sometimes 3, to get a color that was more even. I also noticed that if I used sort of a circular motion when layering the marker, they would look better than if I tried to use a like side to side overlapping line action. That tended to give me a more streaky look, and the circular layering worked a bit better. Also, if you want to layer colors or if you want to draw a color next to one another, be careful to let them fully dry before adding more. If you add wet color next to another wet color, it's gonna transfer a little bit and it might put some of the paint on your marker tip as well. So overall, I would say that I think these are a lot of fun. I might not have found the best way for me to use them yet, but I'm gonna think about that for sure. Like, I like the way they look on the white paper. Like a single layer on white paper can be really interesting. And as acrylic, they are waterproof, but yeah, I haven't found the best paper for them, I think, and the best way to use them yet. I hope that their construction means that there will be refills available for these. That would be really cool, so that you can unscrew the body, remove the cap, and switch out the sort of core of the pen. It's still a little less plastic waste, so I would like that. And yeah, aside from that, I think these are super fun. I would definitely see them as something that you can use to personalize your sketchbook if it's one of those fabric covered sketchbooks. Stickers don't tend to stick really well to those, and I feel like drawing something over the fabric with these acrylic markers would be fun. It might be a bit rough on the felt tip of the markers, but still, these are meant to be used, so you decide what you do with that. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really hope that this was somewhat informative to you guys, and I know I had a really fun time experimenting with these a little bit, and I want to say thank you to ARRTX for sending me these to try out. I will have all the links in the info in the description if you want to check these out, and until the next video, I hope you have a great day. Take care, bye bye.